Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our webinar on diversity, inclusion, and innovation. It's good to see you, and I hope you find the webinar today valuable. Mark is going to be leading the bulk of it, and I'll be handing over to him in a moment. But just to say a little bit about the Innovation Beehive. So we're the Innovation Beehive. We exist to accelerate the potential of people at work. And we do that in three ways: through innovation, culture, and leadership. And why are we talking about diversity, you might ask? Well, Mark is going to answer that question throughout the webinar today because we're talking about diversity and innovation. But one of the things that we do is we look at what challenges are facing people in the HR community, in the learning and development community, and in the world of work generally. And we apply the processes and practices of innovation, so human-centered design, the same process that is used to design this device or the apps that you use on this. And we solve business challenges by doing that. And we do that with a wide range of clients, and they're going to pop up on the screen now. And we see diversity as really important for that. So this webinar is really about sharing our perspective on why diversity is valuable when it comes to innovation and why it's important as something to focus on both for the HR community and the wider innovation community. So Mark, are you there? I can't see your camera.
I am. I was just pouring myself a cup of tea. Hello, Joe. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Joe, you've got the master slides. So I'm going to keep saying to you, next slide, please, like a number 10 press conference. So thank you so much for joining us today. And as Joe said, we're going to be talking about diversity through the lens of innovation, because the world of innovation and the toolkit of innovators is absolutely focused on hearing diverse voices, listening to those voices that might be a little bit quiet, and making sure that it's fully inclusive. So why are we talking about this particularly at the moment? Well, my goodness, the times we're living in. We are living in massively disrupted times. So the COVID-19 pandemic has really forced all businesses to absolutely re-examine their ways of working, to think about their operating models, their routes to market, how they can work safely, and how to anticipate customers' changing needs. But even before we got into this COVID situation, many organizations were experiencing dramatic pressures, challenges, and opportunities arising from things like AI, the innovator's dilemma, digital transformation, and machine learning. And it's nice to see some people on the call here today who actually will know about our white paper, who attended our webinar around leading through disruption. And in that, we talked about we're entering the fourth industrial revolution, which will be led by technology. So digital transformation has massively accelerated due to the global pandemic. And a recent study by the Royal Society of Arts has said COVID-19 is accelerating the rise of robots, with some sectors seeing 5 years of digital transformation in 5 months alone. And this transformation we have all experienced significantly in the way that we work. So remote working has become the norm. We've all become used to working with tools like Microsoft Teams, Zoom, project management aids like Slack and Monday.com. Now, no one knows what's going to happen with COVID-19. We see some vaccinations coming, and fingers crossed and God willing, we'll all be back to normal around Easter. But we will continue to live in these incredibly VUCA times. And what we've seen is over these challenging times, many leaders have tried the classic tools from the innovators toolbox. They've learned to be more agile and more adaptable. They've encouraged their teams to have an experimental mindset, and they've definitely tested that 80% perfect solution in response to new data and new challenges. And at the Innovation Beehive, we've been really encouraged to see more and more teams have the confidence to test, learn, and fail in public, practicing that whole fail fast and learn methodology. Alongside these new ways of working and the global pandemic, we've also witnessed an increased public awareness and a rejection of injustice and inequality in society. The global outpouring of horror at the shooting of George Floyd, and a re-examine of the empire and colonialism here in the UK has meant that many organisations have stepped up and been much more vocal and reflective in their commitments to diversity, equality, and inclusion. Now, alongside this, the rise of social media has meant that we're more connected and more accessible than any time in history. So we can keep in contact with our friends. I'm attending a Thanksgiving dinner tonight, live from Connecticut. We can send people birthday love or pictures of our cat or a latest dog video. However, due to the algorithms, we are increasingly living in what we call an echo chamber. Our view of the world is played back to us and reinforces whatever we believe to be true. And this can lead us to be increasingly unaware of alternative viewpoints, the challenges of those different from ourselves, and actually lead to the entrenchment of our conscious or our unconscious bias. But innovators have long recognized the need to seek understanding from those different from ourselves in order to create solutions that serve those individuals. So Joe, you're going to ask a question.
Yeah, so we like to have interaction on our webinars. So I've just sent a message in the chat box to ask you to exercise your fingers. And here's the first question we're asking. You come to a webinar today about diversity and innovation. So we'd love to know, why is diversity important to you? What are some of the issues or, you know, well, yeah, why is it important? Why ask a question?
Why are you on this webinar? Why is it important? When you saw the email from me and the reminders from Joe, why did you decide that diversity was important to you, whether it's individually or whether it's from an organizational perspective?
So we've had some answers coming through already, Mark. So so that everyone has a voice at work on, or when working on a project, great, to help understand how to leverage diversity. Great. Well, I'm hoping you'll get something valuable from that today, Craig. From a personal perspective, diversity makes life more interesting. I think that's true, absolutely. And organizationally, it means better outputs and outcomes. Brilliant, thank you.
Lovely, thank you so much for sharing. We'll keep you sharing.
Yeah, we've got a couple more coming in actually, Mark. So diversity is important because it's the right thing to do. We want to be a force for good, and creativity is one of the ways we can achieve our business strategy. I like that, Joe. Joanna, you're sort of connecting the two things that this webinar is really focusing on today. Diversity is important for us to always have on our agenda to maximize our organizational effectiveness. Great, absolutely. And to give prime space to bring the authentic self to work. I like that. That's really nice, isn't it, Mark?
Great. Thanks very much.
Keep the comments coming.
Yes, do. So innovation and diversity, do they naturally go hand in hand? I hear you asking. Absolutely. So in the world of innovation, there's always been a requirement for diversity. New innovations on services or products or employee experiences will only be successful if they're built on insight and are reflective of the needs, the wants, desires, and challenges of their end user. In order to understand the world of the end user, innovation teams have long put structures and processes in place to gather diverse perspectives, include a multitude of voices, and ensure different life experiences are captured. Successful solutions are only built upon a recognition that unconscious bias, stereotypes, and assumptions about the end user do not give innovators deep insight into the world of their end user. And Professor Catherine Phillips of Columbia Business School has concluded extensive research into how diversity can encourage the revelation of different perspectives and enable us to look beyond our groupthink and our echo chamber. And a lovely quote from her conclusion is that diversity jolts us into cognitive actions in ways that homogeneity doesn't. So leaders who are looking to break down institutional and unconscious biases to diversity and who are seeking more representation of unheard voices should continue to plunder from the innovators toolkit. And there they'll find a suite of best practices to assist them to gain empathy, see the world outside their own echo chamber, and create a more inclusive workplace. So I'm going to talk briefly about the business case for diversity, which is on the next slide. And I almost wish I didn't have to do it. Perhaps one of the reasons that diversity has not progressed at pace is that leaders are still unaware of the business benefits of a more diverse and inclusive workplace. Now, there's been a whole raft of work done on how culture improves performance, but maybe it's time to argue loudly of how diversity can improve performance. So there's three main areas I want you to take away to argue for it today. One, your customers demand it. So the pandemic has seen a radical shift in the way that consumers interact with brands and service providers. While some of this might indeed be a short-term response to legal restrictions, history teaches us that the fallout from pandemics will have a far-reaching implications for how and when customers interact with organizations going forward. Alongside this, customers are demanding that organizations they buy from use their scale for good and impact positively on areas such as Black Lives Matter, the environment, and sustainability. Leaders who remain within their echo chambers are in danger of not anticipating or responding to shifts in customers' expectations and are therefore in danger of becoming less relevant or even obsolete. For example, Generation Z are not only concerned with the functional aspect of a product or a service, they're increasingly choosing to give their business to organizations who have a positive social impact. At Unilever, for example, I laughed when I saw an advert on television the other night. They responded to environmental concerns and have just introduced the alternative pot noodle container called Lost the Pot, which I love, which is a more environmentally friendly and sustainable packaging. Secondly, it is good for business. So over a 10-year period, Diversity's top 50 companies in the USA, and it's a measure, it's a report that's put out every year, those top 50 companies for diversity outperformed the Dow Jones average by 22%. An organization with differing and more representative voices brings new insights and opportunities to the table. These businesses are able to recognize new and different market opportunities and service unmet and unheard needs. Whilst there's certainly a moral imperative to create a more inclusive workforce, L'Oreal has recognized the business benefits of doing so. So to drive growth and meet the beauty demands of a very diverse customer base, they state that to ensure our products meet the needs of every form of beauty in every culture, our team members must be as diverse and inclusive as the world itself. L'Oreal focuses on creating a sense of belonging at work, a place of inclusion, and they say enabling everyone to give their best so the company benefits from the best of everyone. And they do that by focusing on three key areas: understanding, accepting, and encouraging. And they have looked long and hard at their product base. And any of you who've done work in the Middle East or Asia would have seen skin lightening creams and skin whitening creams and skin brightening creams. And they're beginning to remove those from their portfolio. The third, and as an ex-HR director, this is the one that really gets my juices going, is it about releasing the potential of your talent. From an employee perspective, it's really helpful to see diversity, equality, and inclusion from the perspective of belonging. Do I feel that I'm welcomed and given the opportunity to be heard and progress and release my potential in this organization? And am I truly able to be myself? So a sense of belonging is about creating an environment where employees feel they don't have to filter out certain aspects of their personality, their accents, their mannerisms, or their lived experiences to fit in and be successful. There's been a lot of debate in the media recently about belonging and the antithesis of it. You may have heard the term code switching. And this is where individuals feel they have to change themselves in order to accommodate prejudice or social conventions. And when we're delivering our D&I strategies in your organizations, if we become too focused on the input, setting up this group, setting up that project group, we sometimes can forget about the outcome that we're wanting to create. Thinking about, is this enabling people to be truly who they are and really be themselves and show up for work in their authentic self? So EY did a survey recently, and it reported that when people feel that they belong, they're more productive, more motivated, and more engaged, as well as 3.5 times more likely to contribute to their full innovative potential. So it's not just great for people, it's great for business. And unless organizations are truly able to create this sense of belonging, they'll never realize the potential or quality of ideas from the workforce that they have worked so hard to recruit. This concept of belonging sits at the core of innovation, actively listening and welcoming diverse experience and opinion. In gathering insights, which is the first part of the design thinking innovation process, you look and understand the experiences and needs of end users, and innovators have had to actively develop empathy to meet people where they are without judgment. They are skilled at identifying code switching and manage behavior to identify the real needs, desires, and wants of the target audience. To help leaders understand the benefit of different experiences and perspective, it's helpful to talk about the concept here of your superpower. So a superpower is a unique thing to the individual that shapes the way they view or they show up in the world. It impacts everything they touch, and environments that do not encourage belonging, it can often remain hidden, and the superpower is an untapped potential. When we create a space where our people can name and take pride in their superpower, they feel more validated, recognized for who they are, and they bring a unique and irreplaceable point of view or skill to help crack your business challenge. So I'm gonna be a bit personal here for a moment. I know I've got a script to work from, but I might venture away a little bit, Joe, if that's all right for this. So, because I founded the Innovation Beehive to release energy and potential of people at work and accelerate people's potential. Yeah, I have my own personal struggles about what I bring to the table. So at one organization, I was seconded into a senior HR role, and they told me that I wasn't going to get the job that I was doing and doing very well for the last 6 months because I was just too young. They couldn't make me the HR director because I was too young. I left. I got the phone call from the headhunter and I left. They lost that talent. But in the next job, I was very conscious that I was the youngest person on the exco. So I grew a beard to try and make myself look older. I wore clothes that didn't reflect me being in my late 20s, and I looked like I was 40 rather than 28. So I've been very fortunate. I have had a successful career, and I was appointed to senior roles very early in my career. But I never felt completely comfortable with my communication style. I've got quite a high voice. I've got quite a soft voice. People have called me camp. I use my arms a lot when I speak. And I've seen this work against me. I remember we pitched for a piece of work a number of years ago, and the phone call came through to say that we'd won it, but could I not run the project because I was just too flamboyant for a Midwest audience? We didn't do that piece of work. So my whole life, I've had a little voice inside me that has just said, tone it down, Mock, calm down. And this has really led to me changing my own behavior, adapting my mannerisms, my version of code switching. And I felt uncomfortable doing this, but believed it was the only way that someone like me, a gay man with a high-pitched voice who was called Squeaky at prep school, the only way I could be taken seriously. But that has changed recently. Through working with a coach and listening to the feedback from my clients, I've learned that the flamboyant energy and enthusiasm that I bring is a real positive for my clients. The experience that I've had of homophobic discrimination have made me more empathetic to others and actively seek out the voice of unrepresented. Some people might make assumptions about me because of the way I talk, but because of the experiences I've had, I'm far more focused on trying to understand other people's point of view and really try and get beyond initial responses. So rather than being a barrier to my success, what I've realized is my voice, my mannerisms, the way I present myself has actually fueled by my self-consciousness. And once I have embraced that authentic truth of who I am, the more honest I am, the more I develop deeper client relationships, and the more I've fostered much more trusted advisor status with them. And for me now, most of the time, my mannerisms and my voice aren't a barrier. I consider them my superpower. Rather than inhibit me from doing my job, my unique style enables me to do a great job for my clients. So progressive organizations allow people to really recognize and fully utilize their own superpower, taking what's unique about an individual and using this power to really realize their potential.
Mark, thank you so much for sharing that. That was really well, powerful, and I think perfectly highlighted what you mean by a superpower, and how something that we may have perceived as a negative for so long, actually we can transform into a positive and something that can really add value to our lives. So thank you. And in that spirit, we've got another question. We're wondering if any of you feel you have a superpower, or have been able to identify your superpower. It might be something that's directly related to a sort of traditional, protected characteristic in terms of diversity. It might be something that comes from your own experience that you bring to the table. So, for example, when I first left university, I spent a number of years working in community centres and working in charities, and now I work in a management consultancy. They're very different worlds, but actually that perspective of grassroots community, people working directly with people who were really struggling in their lives, has really helped me to see business challenges from a different perspective. So I bring this experience as well to the conversation. And when it comes to innovation, being able to walk in the customer's shoes and the end user's shoes is really important. And I think I think that's my superpower, that experience that I bring from my post-university days. But we've got some other comments coming in. So empathy drawn upon past experiences. Similar to me, yeah. And so I was able to set up a team of mental health first aiders and spread the word about well-being. That's amazing. So kind of combining your experience of your personal experiences of perhaps mental health issues, but also combining them with the role that you're in and the organization that you're in to actually do something for others. That's wonderful. I feel my superpower is an ability to use quirky humor and approach to level the playing field in terms of diversity and work. Yes, and that came from one of my colleagues actually, and I know he uses humor as a brilliant tool in facilitation to sort of bring people with him. I have a broad Yorkshire accent that I can draw upon, useful as it's accepted that Yorkshire folks say it like it is. That's great, I love that. And here's another: creativity and passion enables me to inspire and bring people with me and change. That's great. Connection with the underdog in the room. I think a lot of us have, if we look back on our experience, we see perhaps from our early days in our career, we remember and hold on positively to those early days experience. And if we draw on that to learn how to lead people and learn how to be part of a team effectively, I think that's a really powerful superpower. And just on the accent piece, I spent years trying to lose my Welsh accent when I came to England, and now I'm trying to get it back because I see that as a superpower for the same reason as the Yorkshire accent. People think I can sing, but I can't.
Thanks very much for sharing that. I'm going to move on now on the next slide to think about diversity of thinking, cognitive diversity. So successful innovators know that sticking to existing processes and ways of seeing the world can actually blind them to new opportunities and new possibilities. Do things you've always done them and you'll get the same result. Think and behave in the same way you've always done and you'll get the same result. But innovation needs new ways of behaving and new ways of thinking. It requires new and diverse perspective. Artists like Picasso and Monet created great works of art precisely because they thought differently. They broke traditional art norms and challenged the interpretation of form and light. Their diversity of thought inspired others to innovate and create new artistic masterpieces. But how can we in business learn from these masters? We must recognize that just by digging harder in the same place will not give us nuggets of gold. We must listen to other pathfinders and find new places to dig. In business, we can become locked into seeing our place and our way in the world. We can come locked into seeing the world from our point of view. And this can preclude us from seeing new possibilities. By staying in what we call our river of thinking, we are simply digging a deeper hole in the same place. Innovators have always sought out new opportunity areas and challenged conventional ways of working. Whether it's Picasso to Dyson, these individuals who find new ways of doing things are the one who find new ways of working and new voices to listen to. Jumping out of our river of thinking can encourage a more inclusive approach. We must listen to those other pathfinders and find new places to dig. To do this, we must recognize and listen to more diverse thinking preferences and widen our view, busting out of our existing echo chambers and challenging what we know to be true and how the world currently works. And at the end of this session, Joe will talk to you about a free resource, a cognitive diversity thinking tool. I'm going to talk a little bit then now in the next slide about hearing diverse voices. So I remember a client telling me the challenges they encountered when they were launching a chocolate bar in India. So with the rise of the middle class and more disposable income, they spotted an opportunity within the market. They knew that the Indian market was very concerned with value and the consumer thought hard about how they spent every rupee. My client's organization had a unique air whip technology which created a product that was significantly bigger on shelf than the local competitor. They concluded that their insight around the customer's value expectations and their ability to create a big bar of chocolate would give them a competitive advantage. Bigger meant better value for money, after all, didn't it? So they launched their chocolate bar and it didn't sell. So they revisited the business case and they decided the problem lay with packaging. So they repackaged, relaunched the chocolate bar in a new wrapper and it didn't sell. So then the exec leadership team decided to get involved and they flew to India. You can imagine how welcoming the Indian team were. But what became apparent in their initial meetings with the NPD team is they had not looked outside their research. They'd not sufficiently listened to a very diverse Indian consumer base. So the exec team set up home visits with Indian customers. And I remember my client telling me that she was sitting on a floor with a mother, surrounded by her children and bars of chocolate, talking about their families and their kids. The mother passed a piece of chocolate to one of her children and said something ever so quietly under her breath, so quiet that my client couldn't hear it. Now she asked the mother to repeat what she'd said, and after some reassurance and persuasion that nothing would be insulting, the mother replied, "Well, I said to her, here, have some air. I don't want to be rude, but you're Western and you can afford to pay for air. Your chocolate bar is just air, and why should I pay for it when air is free?" It was an absolutely cataclysmic and insightful moment for my client. It was immediately apparent that the NPD team had remained in their river of thinking and had not looked beyond to listen to more diverse voices in the Indian market. Their whole proposition was based on their ability to air whip the chocolate, but it actually meant that the Indian consumer felt they were being taken advantage of. So how do we use this? What are the principles of this piece of stimulus? For leaders, this story shows how not seeing beyond our view of the world, we can exclude valuable insight and lived experience, which could otherwise help us to be really successful. And an inability to see beyond what you believe to be true can have far greater ramifications than just a bar of chocolate. Let me explain. So in his fantastic book that I recommend, Rebel Ideas, Matthew Syed shows how the Secret Service's extremely homogeneous workforce, white men from a middle-class background, with little cognitive diversity, led to a collective blindness over the threat posed by Osama bin Laden. His conclusion should persuade any leader to create a more inclusive workforce. By doing this, a leader is able to see a more nuanced perspective, understand different ways interpreting the world, to spot threats and opportunities. Yes, there was absolutely a sea of red flags that the Secret Service were looking at, but they were not able to see the biggest red flag because they were not able to understand the world that they were looking at. It required them to shift their view of the world. Now, on the next slide, I'll talk through a couple of examples of how you can shift your view of the world. Many of the world's inventions have been the result of shifting the view above the horizon and working to connect seemingly disparate entities. Clayton Christensen, in his fantastic piece of work, The Innovator's DNA, talks about innovators that are able to connect seemingly unconnected dots to create something new. And great innovations are unlikely to occur by staying within your current boundaries. Great ideas are unlikely to occur if you dig in the same place. Now, interesting, the number of patents in the USA within just one boundary area is 12%. 88% of other patents are the result of clashing together two or more boundary areas or different worlds to create a new innovation. And we believe that innovation and advances over the next few decades will come from something called recombinant innovation, where innovators fuse together two ideas or two principles from separate fields, which may at first seem completely unrelated. And Stuart Karpman calls this the adjacent possible. So we ourselves actually have seen this every day in our wheeled suitcase. The wheeled suitcase is the merging together of two seemingly disparate entities, transport and packaging. The printing press was built upon wine manufacturing techniques, and we ourselves developed in this way. Billions of years ago, carbon atoms swam around in this soup, but then they began mutating. They continued to evolve and change, and each mutation building upon the last, each step on the evolutionary path taking advantage of new opportunities opening up. And ideas follow a similar journey. They evolve, they adapt, they operate within a complex ecosystems. The ones that fulfill the biggest potential rarely operate in a siloed vacuum. And a great example of this is the Waze app, used by millions of Uber drivers to get you from A to B. It's an amalgamation of the adjacent possible, an amalgamation of technology which already existed, GPS, smartphone, digital maps, and social networks. So what can leaders learn from this? How might it strengthen the case for diversity and inclusion? What it says is the answers to our business challenges may just lie around us, but we're unable to see them. From the practice of recombinant innovations, we can learn the value of connecting diverse, different views and experiences to create an exponential and inclusive solution. As leaders, we must constantly challenge ourselves and question what we hold to be truths, seek out other perspectives, and together we can imagine and create infinite possibilities. But to do this, we have to create inclusive environments. Joe, you're going to talk here.
Thank you, Mark. So I think it's really insightful what you've talked about so far with the diversity of thinking, and then actually not just having that diversity of thinking, but also seeking to listen to those voices and hearing those voices, and then also using those voices and using that diversity to shift our worldview and to explore new possibilities. And as you say, we're about to talk about building an environment in the organization that will actually foster and enable that. But before we do, we thought it would be interesting to hear from everyone on the call. What enables you to feel like you belong in your workplace? Because belonging is a really important part of inclusion and diversity. And I can see some comments coming in already. You're very quick on the typing today, everybody. So we've got a sense of being included in conversations at early stages. That's a really good point. And similarly, having my opinions heard, that's a good one too. I think, that sense of feeling included in decision making, in conversations. So it comes back to feeling like your voice is being heard, as well as actually seeking to hear other voices. Inclusion modeled from the top to everyone. So there's a piece about role modeling there, which is something we talk about a lot when it comes to innovation. Feeling valued. It'll be interesting if you can expand on that a little bit, and just say what sort of things make you feel valued. That would be really interesting to hear. Being able to think out loud and have others build on your half thoughts. Yes, that's interesting. I think we talk about signaling during the innovation process, and there's a time for expansive thinking and a time for reductive thinking. And the kind of the half thoughts piece is perhaps more expansive. And I guess the important thing is to make sure people know when that will be an appropriate thing to do and when we need to just get our heads down and carry on. People speaking with me in a way that I understand, linked to my personality and cognitive diversity. So that comment came from one of my colleagues, Zach, who actually created the cognitive diversity profile, which I'll be sharing with you in a little while. And I know he's particularly passionate about adapting ourselves to enable others to thrive. And also, this is a nice one. Craig said, I like it when people in work make use of my superpower. That's great, really good. Thank you, everyone. So Mark, you're going to tell us a little more about belonging and how it links to innovation and inclusion, aren't you?
Yeah, great, thank you. So I've already highlighted the importance of creating a sense of belonging. We've talked a little bit about that there, to ensure inclusiveness. And this sense of belonging is essential as an element in teams who are able to constantly innovate and solve challenges. These high-performing teams operate in a psychologically safe environment. Not only do team members feel they're able to be their true selves at work, they're also able to practice moderate risk-taking, speaking their mind, creativity, and sticking their neck out without the fear of having it cut off. Just these types of behaviors can lead to market breakthroughs. And there exists within these teams high levels of trust. And this trust creates the conditions for experimenting, jumping out of your river of thinking without a fear of retribution. And one of our clients, Google, is recognized as one of the most innovative organizations on the planet. They've been incredibly successful. And many of you hearing this today might use Gmail, Google Maps, Google search multiple times a day. They also have had multiple failures and shutdowns, such as Google+, Google Hire, Google Glass. And rather than these failures creating a toxic environment of recriminations and reductive thinking, Google leadership actively encourages their teams to continually look for what they call a better answer and for more new challenges to solve. Google is obsessed with data. They want to understand, or they wanted to understand, how some managers led teams that performed better than others. And they called this project Project Oxygen. And they identified the highest performing teams are the ones where their leaders demonstrated the 10 oxygen behaviors. And two I particularly want to bring out for you there and highlight. Number 3, creates an inclusive environment showing concern for success and well-being. And 9, collaborates across Google. So Google have evolved these behaviors over the years to become the list that you see above. And they've supported them with performance management training. Everybody in the organization goes through unconscious bias training to try and understand how leaders can avoid making what they call suboptimal decisions, especially around people. So leaders who wish to continually innovate should seek to create work environments where their people feel safe to put their ideas forward, knowing that they will not be shot down or criticized for doing so. They should reflect on how they give their teams the oxygen to grow and deliver their best possible work. Now, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail in the last section of our workshop together, or our webinar together, on how do innovators ensure inclusion. So there are some real practical activities employed by innovation teams which can give inspiration for leaders who want to create a more inclusive and diverse ways of working and thinking. So firstly, diverse teams. So whenever we put on an innovation challenge for a client or work on a project, we set up what we call a working party. And this is made up of a diverse group of people right across the organization, representing all levels and all roles. We work with them, listening to them, gathering their insights in a non-judgmental way to test assumption, seek out ways of ensuring what we design represents all voices, and gather insights that we may miss because we're just being hired by someone senior in the organization, and they or us may therefore have an unconscious bias or make assumptions like air whip technology, bigger bar, we're going to sell the chocolate. And we use lots and lots of different technical solutions to embrace a wide population of stakeholders, taking into account thinking preferences, communication styles, and personal preferences. And that way we don't base our insights and ideas from what we can see from our own river of thinking. The second element that innovation teams have down pat is about hearing the real problem. So insight is the first stage of any successful innovation. These insights give you a real overview into the world of your challenge and allow you to define the problem that really exists, which can sometimes be very different from the problem that you thought you were solving. Ensuring that you connect with a diverse audience allows you to challenge assumptions that you held when the problem was originally identified, and enables you to really understand what you need to solve. L'Oreal has developed many different solutions to connect in and understand the world of different stakeholders and their problems. They created a social media platform around telenovelas, those wonderful soap operas they have in America, which is targeted specifically at the Hispanic community. It allows the fans of these daytime soap operas to get inside information and share their love of a dramatic and good story. But it also allows L'Oreal to have a direct line into this community, to understand what's important to them around the way they live their life, around their beauty, and therefore spot opportunities to develop products and services to help serve them better. So what leaders can take from this? The lesson to learn is the importance of putting practical processes in place to seek out diverse voices, not just having the intention, operationalizing it. By doing this, leaders will be able to ensure they're solving the real problem, not just the ones they see from their view of the world. So to do this, they must consider establishing new ways to connect in with broader stakeholder groups. The third element and tool from the Innovators Toolkit is Parallel Universe, a key tool in the toolkit. So we passionately believe at the Innovation Beehive of bringing in external stimulus into our workshops. I've given some examples today, some stories, and then tried to explain what the principles are. And if we were working with you, we'd use those principles to then idea generate around your particular challenge. But the stimulus that we create isn't just random. We gather stories and examples from industries and disciplines specifically outside our clients' world. I know, Leslie, you're on this call. You remember some of the workshops we've been in where we've brought in everything from Michelle Obama to Google's programs. And this helps us to understand what principles our case studies have employed to solve a problem adjacent to the one that we are tackling, but not in the same industry. It brings its own baggage. They deliberately, therefore, force you to jump out of your river of thinking or functional norms or that collective blindness that Matthew Syed spotted when dealing with the Secret Service in America. And this way of working enables our clients to see a much broader landscape of possible solutions and ensures ideas that are developed are not rooted in existing processes or assumptions. And it's a great tool to help leaders to learn what's happening in other industries, think laterally, take a different point of view as they create solutions to their own particular challenge. And the last tool I want to talk to you today is called Challenge the Assumption. So building upon a parallel world tool, we like to challenge the assumptions that are held by a client about their particular industry, their function, or their functional norms. In this exercise, we list all the rules and assumptions that are currently held by our client on the left-hand side. And then we ask the question, what if this wasn't true? What if we broke that rule? What if we challenged the assumption that we have here? What could it look like? So, for example, when working on a new flavor variant for a condiment for a very well-known mayonnaise brand, we listed all the assumptions around what it had to be. We assume that a condiment had to be liquid. But what if it was gas or a vapor or dust that you sprinkled on? This exercise plays tricks on the mind. It increases your expansive thinking, takes away the unconscious bias you may have around something just as day-to-day as mayonnaise. And just imagine the power you could have if it was applied to bigger challenges in your organization. So to conclude, and before I hand back to Joe, hopefully today I've outlined some of the social and business benefits of diversity and inclusion. I hope the fact that you're here today means you're already convinced of its moral, social, and economic imperative. The Innovators Toolkit has long been filled with activities and ways of behaving that can benefit leaders as you seek to have a real impact with your D&I strategy. Learning how innovators seek out and listen to diverse points of view, how the best business ideas are generated in high trust environments with a sense of belonging, and helping our people to celebrate their difference as superpowers. That will help us to achieve success. Now, those of you who attended our Leadership 4.0 programs will know that we've identified 5 habits that disruptive leaders have: lead in head, lead in heart, lead in health, lead in habit. But I just want to focus here at the end on leading in history. You, as leaders in your business, have a real opportunity to create a leadership legacy around listening to more diverse people and breaking down historic injustice. Not only will your teams have created more innovative and successful business solutions, you will have a legacy that is a force for good. Long after you finish the servicing the people that you are leading, your impact will be left behind. Doing well and doing good. Is there any better incentive at all? And I wish you the very best of luck with it.
Thank you very much, Mark. That was brilliant. Thank you. I hope everybody took a lot from that. It certainly changed my perspective on diversity when you shared with me a few days ago what it was that we were going to be talking about on the call today. And I think that changed. A lot of people, when they think of diversity, think of visible characteristics, gender, ethnicity, sexuality to an extent, disability to an extent. But actually, there's also diversity of thought, cognitive diversity, which is often less visible and something that you can identify. And Zach, one of our colleagues, runs sessions on how to identify your own and others' cognitive diversity. But to help with that, we've also created a free diversity profile, which is completely free to use. It takes about 5 minutes to complete the questionnaire. It's a combination of sort of psychological theory that Zach's an expert in. And if you check out any of our webinars on YouTube, which talk about cognitive diversity, you'll see wonderful explanations from him of the science behind this. But that science is also combined with our experience of working with innovators in our clients over the last 12 years. What we've done is we've helped organizations using this profile to just start conversations with each other about their cognitive diversity and to understand the makeup of their teams when they're working on innovation projects or when they're working together as a team, to begin to understand why they sometimes lock horns, why they sometimes don't manage to get things over the line from idea to implementation, where the blockers are going to be in the process. It's a really useful tool for understanding yourself and then hopefully working with your team to better understand them and for them to better understand you as well. So the link to that is on the slide, and I'll also just paste it into the chat box there. So feel free to take that. I'll also put it in a link in an email later, which we'll be sending out, which will include a link to the recording of this webinar, and it'll also we'll also be attaching the latest white paper, which is about diversity and innovation. It's hot off the press. In fact, I've got a hard copy here, which I'm in the middle of proofreading, so it'll come out later today. But that covers everything that we covered on the webinar today and more. And I do hope you find that useful. But thank you all so much for participating in the chats as well and for joining today. We're giving you back 10 minutes to your day because this was scheduled for an hour, but we always try and give people a little bit of a break before lunch. So thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of the week and look forward to seeing you on future webinars and to hearing if you got any feedback on today's webinar. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Bye.